If everybody could please rise, we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Santa Cruz, please lead us in the pledge. Flags over to your right. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And just like at the U of A games, we had all kinds of flags today, so that's good. All right. We have a lot on the agenda, so we're going to kind of clip along. I'm going to ask Christina Bohan to do the roll call. She's filling in for Gilbert.
John Winchester. Sean Sansel.
Here.
Melissa Brown Rodriguez. Kelly Lee. Here. Charlene Robinson. Here. Lucretia Free.
That's too bad.
Tom Rosen.
Here.
Frank Santapus.
Here.
Ed Berger.
Present?
John Bernal. Frank Spratt.
Here.
Bill Schlesinger.
Here.
That's too bad. 8.
We have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, I hope everybody took a look at the meeting notes. Very well done. Any comments or revisions to the meeting notes from the last meeting? Go ahead. Yes, Tom?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I do have a comment, though.
Oh, okay.
On page 4, first paragraph, the middle of the paragraph, sales tax is the most viable, not liable. So with a V instead of an L. There is a big difference. Although it depends upon how much you're paying, I guess. Anyway, if we can make that small change, we have a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment. Is that a friendly amendment that you approve with the amendment?
No, go ahead.
Okay, and is there a second?
I second it, Charlene.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, the meeting minutes pass. Thank you very much for excellent meeting notes. We appreciate the effort that goes into this every month. Okay. We have an action item every 2 years, according to our bylaws. We elect a new chair and a new vice chair for the committee. It's been my pleasure to serve over the last couple of years. We do have 2 nominations from the last meeting where we took up the topic. We have a nomination for chair, Charlene Robinson. So I'm opening it up to the floor. Are there any other nominations? Okay, we'll get to vice in just a second, Frank. Okay. Any second call? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a vote through unanimous acclamation that we approve Charlene Robinson. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nay? Okay, let's go ahead and go to the vice chair. Frank, there was a motion, but you can second that motion that was made at the last meeting. Okay, we have lots of nominations for Tom here. All right, any other nominations for vice chair? Both of these people put in a lot of time with the committee. They understand the issues of what we're doing, and we'll move forward very positively with them. Not hearing any other nominations, through unanimous acclamation, I ask for an aye vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we don't need a nay vote on that since they were all ayes. Okay, congratulations, Charlene. Congratulations, Tom. I know you'll lead us forward. We appreciate it. And for those who don't know, it does take a little extra effort to be in these spots. Charlene has filled in for me a couple of times. She's on the phone call where we set up the agenda every meeting. And Tom will be on the phone call now as they set up the agenda every meeting. So there's time not just in this meeting, there's preparatory time, interaction with staff to make sure everything goes smoothly. And they have been doing a fantastic job, I must say. We appreciate it. And anyway, welcome our new officials for the committee.
Chair Verberg, can I have a slight moment of privilege here?
Sure.
You just had such great remarks on the effort it takes to be a chair, an effective chair, the extra work that goes in outside of this meeting. So in recognition of that, we have a little plaque we'd like to give you to recognize your past year of service.
Is it 2 years or 1 year?
2 years, I guess, yes, you're right.
Like 30 years. Very close.
COVID time, still hard to approximate. Yes, thank you very much. So.
Chair Berber, John Bernal has joined the meeting.
Oh, excellent. So that gives us, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. Do we have 9 or 8? 9. Oh, wonderful, because we can do the bylaws amendment. And for some reason, I guess bylaws or otherwise, I have to run the rest of this meeting. So if you'll put up with me, you'll have the good fortune of Charlene next time. She might have a little more humor than I do. Okay. Bylaw update. The essence of the bylaw update, and this was recommended by staff, and we took a look, and it made a lot of sense. During the pandemic, of course, a lot of us were doing things online, and our bylaws allow for that, and a lot of people did do online, but it says only 3 times. Of course, that doesn't work because we have people who are doing it multiple times beyond 3, because they're out of town or otherwise caught up in a meeting that abuts this one or what have you. So we simply are taking out one sentence that says you can do it up to 3 times. That means taking that sentence out, you can do it as many times as you need to be able to participate in the activities of this committee. So I'd like to hear a motion that we go ahead and strike that one sentence in the bylaws.
I motion that we strike it.
Okay. Charlene moves that we strike that sentence. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Tom. Tom seconds it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Aye. Oh, that's good. We appreciate the echo. It adds spark. Okay, so that's now officially changed, and I'm sure that'll be available to members of the committee as needed. We're moving now to a topic that we've spent a lot of time on, and I see Paul's coming forward, the Deputy Director. He presented a really excellent presentation last meeting. We asked, well, what would you do with 0.25% sales tax, basically 25 million or 50 million? And the discussion said, hey, could you round this so that when we add the bottom line lower numbers, it comes to 25 and 50. So Paul, please highlight what you came up with.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee members, for having us here today. This is a vitally important topic that we talk about, and both viability and liability can exist for some of these funding sources, as we know. But we'd like to kind of just walk you through the scenarios of what we're thinking at this point in time. We're going to introduce, a healthy grain of salt with this, as there can be a lot of flexibility depending on the department and the transportation network needs that go along with these. Let's see. Christina, will you advance these for me? Perfect. Thank you so much. So what you saw last time was a similar chart to what is on the screen now. What we did was we tried to identify more of an upper threshold where we would expect each category to potentially land, and then explain to you that pavement preservation would depend on how aggressively we were going into pavement preservation in any given year. So what we've done now is we bound the entire set of categories to that $25 million ceiling. So this is, at this point in time, kind of an averaged or a balanced set of categories in terms of where we would hope to see investment priorities. Again, the grain of salt is we may not necessarily have active transportation projects, for example, in a particular year. So that number may not ultimately always be $2 million. It could be zero in some years. So some of those other categories would likely shift. But this gives you an idea of how we would, target balancing a program of investment. What we've seen is, some investment opportunities are not necessarily allowing us investment in all of these categories. A good example of this is the RTA Next countywide sales tax that's being investigated and pursued now. There is not a pavement preservation line item in the draft plan at this point in time. So lots of caveats that go along with this. So we did the same. Go ahead to the next slide if you would. We did the same for the 50 million. Oh, sorry about that. Too fast. Back to the other one. We did the same with the $50 million scenario where we upped some of the category investments, targeting what we think an ideal balance would be for categories moving forward. So this gives you a sense of what the average or the ideal would look like. We would likely see a little bit of variation depending on project readiness and things of that nature. There may not be federal grant match opportunities in any given year, so we would ultimately see some shifting around. All right, go ahead to the next one if you would. Thank you. So with that, you also asked to have a little bit more discussion on both impact fees and sales taxes. So we pulled together some overview slides to walk you through impact fees. Most of this is in the papers that we have shared, but this is just kind of revisiting and making sure that everybody's kind of on the same page about what we're talking about. So impact fees were first adopted in Pima County in 1997. That essentially means they do not necessarily constitute a new funding source as far as the committee is concerned. This is a funding source that's already in our repertoire. We're using it. We're applying it to projects as we are bound to by law. We can only use it to pay for capacity improvements and cannot address maintenance or other needs. So those are some of the rules that we're dealing with as we're looking at applying impact fees. So oftentimes an important part to note is that the collection needs to kind of accumulate over multiple years for us to have a good, robust amount of impact fees in any given impact fee area for us to make meaningful project investments and move projects along at a design and construction clip that we're used to. All right, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there are 7 different impact fee areas. We're looking at a per residence standing fee of $8,500 or so. The ordinance was updated in 2020. Go ahead to the next slide if you would. We are looking at another update that's going to be coming forward as well. So the 2020 list of projects identified 28 specific projects in our IIP, which is a 10-year project list of projects that would use impact fees in the given 7 areas that we've identified on the map. It's based on land use and growth assumptions, so we can't necessarily just deviate from this list of projects and invest in other projects that may come up. It is bound by law that we have to have it in our infrastructure improvement program or plan and listed as we see here in the chart that you can't read terribly well. Go ahead to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we are going to be stepping into an update to update that list of projects. The development assumptions are going to be updated, land use and development numbers that will work closely with the Department of Development Services, and projects may be added or revised. We also could be seeing an impact fee rate revision. We're not quite sure at this time, but that's certainly going to be put into that point of discussion, and DOT will have input into that, but we will not necessarily have final say on that. So it'll be something for consideration. Go ahead to the next slide. So that kind of gives you a summary of the impact fee overview. And again, revisit the white paper, and if you have follow-up questions, you know where to find us. On the sales tax side, We have kind of defined for you in the white paper two major options here. So option one is being part of a general countywide sales tax along with other needs that are identified by the Board of Supervisors. A good example of this is the jail infrastructure that's being considered now, evaluating what the needs are and what the potential funding sources could look like. We could see something that is a countywide sales tax that funds jail infrastructure needs and transportation in some sort of proportional amount laid out by the board. This does require unanimous Board of Supervisors approval. There's no election needed. It would dictate a limited share for transportation projects, and there is a likely expectation that we would be required to distribute to entities within Pima County. That would be City of Tucson and other jurisdictions that are incorporated within Pima County. So it would not be for the sole purpose of unincorporated Pima County roadways, from what we can tell at this point. It is separate from the Regional Transportation Authority tax. Go ahead to the next slide. That brings us to option two, which is to have the county share be part of the RTA tax. What we're hearing from the RTA board, this is likely limited to a half cent. There is ability to go up to a full cent. They've expressed they're not really willing to have that conversation at this point in time. That could change in the future, we're not quite sure. Again, a limited share for Pima County projects and limited scope and allowable transportation projects. The example that I gave you at the beginning, pavement maintenance and preservation is not currently part of the RTA Next draft plan that is proposed. So that would mean we would need to be seeking and securing a separate funding source to continue pavement preservation activities. So that kind of gives you an overview of the sales tax for transportation. We do not, as Pima County, have the same afforded ability as the incorporated cities and towns to pursue their own city or town-wide sales tax. The way we do that is through the RTA mechanism. So those are kind of the two options that we've laid out for you. We're happy to have additional discussion. At this point in time, we are deep into the draft RTA Next plan. You'll hear from Catherine later on. That draft is going to be going to the RTA board on Thursday for their consideration. And then following that, what we've heard is the steps would be to take that out to the public for comment, incorporate the public input, and then aiming at an election in the spring of 2025. So we're watching that closely. We're very deeply involved and exploring that opportunity.
Okay, questions for Paul? Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Paul, thanks again for updating it. And it's good to see the columns total up to 25 and 50 this time around. Just to make sure that we're clear, so this is, all these monies is that you laid out in the two charts, this is on top of what we get for HERF, correct?
That would be on top of what we get for HERF. That is correct.
Okay. So if we put a sales tax, and I think I asked this last in December or November, whenever it was brief before, is this, if we go ahead with a half a cent sales tax and it's used with other projects whatsoever, is then that fenced or dedicated within the general fund for transportation?
Depending on what option you're looking at, absolutely could be. So in the case of the RTA option, it will be explicitly laid out what the county investments are for transportation projects that the voters would approve. At this point in time, our share of that is something close to almost 25 million a year, I believe. It's in that range.
Okay, so in option one, though, if we're doing a half cent sales tax, we have to share it with the other jurisdictions, and it could be lumped in together with jail infrastructure. So
Correct.
the transportation slice of the pie would be much smaller.
We don't necessarily know, but, I'm sure it could be under a variety of scenarios. We could see a 50-50 investment. But what I believe would happen is the action of the Board of Supervisors would dictate and determine what the share proportion is for the uses of the sales tax, and that would be bound. And so we would see that investment commitment for transportation. If, hypothetically it were 50%, it would secure the 50% of the half-cent sales tax collection for transportation purposes, and then that 50% would be a portion to unincorporated Pima County and portions to the incorporated
Right.
communities within Pima County.
Okay. So back on your, on the part of the briefing for impact fees, and you were saying that, I just want to, make sure that everybody knows that, like the town, the impact does not charge for impact fees when they do building permits. Okay, so the impact fees, we're just talking about unincorporated Pima County, is that correct?
That is correct, absolutely right.
Okay. So my other question on that was, you say there may be an adjustment on what the impact fees are going to be, and you'll have, the Department of Transportation will have input, but you don't have the final say. Is the final say with the Board of Supervisors after, and who's the lead on that then? Development Services or?
I'm going to answer what I believe it is, and then Catherine will correct me. I believe it is Development Services that does take the lead. There is, healthy input from DOT.
Right.
And then ultimately, the Board of Supervisors makes the call based on the recommendation
Sure.
that's led by Development Services.
And this is where I get to correct him. DOT will take the lead. It's all written out in statute and in code in terms of the public hearings that are required and notification to public and all of these things. So there's a long involved process. The way the state statute reads right now, we need to update the infrastructure plan portion of it, so the project list on a 5-year basis. We don't necessarily need to touch the fees. So,
Okay.
we have not evaluated which approach we'll take. The last go round, we did use a consultant to help develop this because it's a lot of work, and it's about an 1-year, 18-month period to get it through the first time. We imagine the update will be quicker. But yes, ultimately, Board of Supervisors is who approves the plan. You may recall the last time we did it, instead of going straight to the 8,500 a rooftop, they did a 3-year phase-in of the fee. So it was a little less jarring of an increase.
So then it was put into the homeowner's property tax bill? Is that how that went?
It's paid with your
Or the
building
developers,
permit.
the
Mhm,
developer.
And so
Yeah.
the fee is assessed by Development Services when they're issuing those
Right.
permits.
Okay. And you're talking about the half-cent sales tax, and the sales tax on the last page of the briefing, yeah. Is that half sales tax going to be, would that be on top of what's taxed for RTA next?
That would essentially be a continuation of RTA next. It would not be an additional half cent. It would be the half cent that's currently in place expires in 2026, and this would go following that.
Okay, so there's no additional then, if RTA passed, it wouldn't be a 1-cent sales tax, it'd still be a half a cent.
And just for further clarification, so when a transportation exclusive sales tax is what the RTA is working to extend for another 20 years. The county is unlikely to go for some sort of transportation exclusive sales tax. The county the Board of Supervisors may determine that it's necessary to go to a sales tax for other things such as the jail, such as other, expense-related things. And there's potential for transportation to be a fraction of that tax, but when we're talking exclusive transportation sales tax, right now, we're focusing on the RTA effort
Okay.
to extend that, which is just the half cent, not adding up with multiple transportation sales taxes.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Paul.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, those are good questions, I think, on the minds of all the members of the committee, so I appreciate your bringing it up. Other questions? Okay, reflecting back on last meeting's notes, and for those in the audience who have not been here, and this sounds kind of mundane, but, we only have so much in the way of resources, and we're trying to figure out as a committee, what could we recommend to the board that could be earmarked for transportation so our roads are kept in shape instead of not? I think it was John Winchester in the last meeting said, and he's not here today, so I can say anything, but really won't. He said, you know, I don't think there's anything talked about much more than the Wildcats, but then infrastructure comes next. Because people, you know, they get unhappy. I mean, we know. We drive on these roads too, and we appreciate hearing from the audience because that's the problem out there, and it's part of the infrastructure. It's not all the infrastructure, but it's the part people use a lot every day. So we're trying to figure out what can we do to tease out a little bit more money earmarked for transportation. So getting back to the committee, I'm going to open it up for any other comments about the potential for a mix with sales tax and impact fees, because that's kind of where we were leaning in the last meeting. Any further comments on that? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a motion associated with it. So any other comments?
I
Kathy?
recall what the history is of the sales tax. What I think we talked about last year is the sales tax was approved at some point over the last few years and then and used for transportation purposes, but it's no longer in place. Can you remind me if that the history of that?
I think maybe perhaps we're confusing the property tax.
Yeah.
So we had a property tax back in 2018 for transportation road purposes. And then after 1 year, that was not renewed because we started to work towards the pay-go program that we're in year 5 of now. So I think that might be the confusion. The county has never had a transportation exclusive sales tax.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that clarification. And then as far as the pay-go, you said that's a 5-year plan, or what is the longevity of that?
So the pay-go plan is more than just our pavement portion of it. Of course, that's what we focus on in this group. But the pay-go plan is something that the county at large adopted back in 2019 as a way of its pay-as-you-go. So historically, there'd been a lot of bonding initiatives where you were building capital projects, whether it be transportation, parks, flood control, with bonded money. And instead of going out to the public for another bond, they determined it would be best to pay for projects as we had the money on hand to pay for those projects, allowing the property tax to not continue to increase to cover those bond reimbursements, and you can kind of split that funding from property tax into capital projects as well as all the other things it goes to. So it doesn't have a sunset. The portion that is planned for our pavement program was through 2030, fiscal year 2030. That was the plan proposed. And so the support of our pavement program, at this point, I can't plan or anticipate for continued support from PAYGO beyond that year. That's what we're working to build, a sustainable program that can be supported with special revenues that we get for VLT.
Thank you.
Well, and to add to what Catherine was saying, we did get a big chunk of PAYGO money over the last few years, and that's made a big difference in our roads out there.
Huge difference.
But in the meantime, we still face, road repair and road issues throughout the county. So I'm going to put something out there for consideration and see if someone will make a motion to the effect of what I'm going to suggest, given all of our discussion over the months. And before we do that, I want to thank the finance staff and the transportation staff for helping us with this paper that we put together. I should say they largely put together, but we had some input too. Countywide Department of Transportation White Paper Review. This looks at 4 different options for funding. And without their help, we wouldn't put this together as well as it was. So I'm going to entertain a motion that I think the committee may rise to. First off, I think we should send a letter to the board with our findings and attach this paper. We put a lot of work into this. Our time, Finance Committee's time, and Transportation staff's time, including Paul up there, who's looking very seriously at his notes, because if there's anything to comment on this, we certainly ask for him to. So the letter would do the following, because we don't want to compete with the RTA Next funding. we would say something to the effect, pending the results of RTA funding, we'd like consideration of earmarked tax. Earmarking meaning a small share from impact fees, which was what Paul was talking about. It's up for consideration anyway. We can maybe get a small amount from that. Say out of the 50 million, I don't know if it's 1 to 3 million. I don't know what the amount is. They can advise us on that, but a small amount from impact fees to show the business community, and basically people buying new homes here, support good roads. And secondly, that be married with sales tax, of which a share would come immediately to the county because it's shared with other local jurisdictions in the county. A letter to that. I'd like to also have in that letter a quote from page 15. There are 3 sentences there, and I'll just read a little bit of it. Revenues collected under a countywide sales tax would need to be utilized on a countywide basis. Policies for the distribution of funds to municipalities and to the county for the unincorporated areas would need to be resolved in advance. In other words, there's a little bit of preparatory time with this. So in the letter, we should say we support the preparatory time for this. And, we're not asking for action until after RTA next is resolved anyway. Pending how that comes out, if we don't have an RTA next, we need this even more because we won't have other than the ongoing funding from HERF and whatever the department can put together. So the letter would include a quote from that paper. And I also like to say, and it has nothing to do with the paper, the letter to the board. But if we send this letter to the board this time, the last letter we sent on PAYGO got debated and discussed. We didn't have additional money added this year. I would like to suggest if we go with a letter like this, that the representatives for each board member go and talk to the board member about it and answer their questions. I think that's our responsibility. If we're going to send them a letter, we should tell them why. And we should sit there and explain, give answers to their questions. I don't think the committee's done this in the past, but anyway, that's what I would recommend that we consider once we agree on a letter. So I'd like to entertain a motion somewhat along the lines of what I suggested. Is there anybody here after, I don't know, we've been working on this, 9 months, 8 months? Anybody here who would make a motion to the effect of what I mentioned?
Chair Verb?
Yes.
I have some questions.
Go ahead.
First of all, I have a couple about your motion. One, I think I understand. Whatever happens to the RTA, it will have nothing in there for pavement preservation or repair, correct?
At this time, that is
A
absolutely-
separate Pima County sales tax, whether it's combined with other things like the jail, could have pavement preservation, could be dedicated solely for or in part to pavement preservation and repair.
Correct.
Chair Verberg, you were talking about and the impact fees at this time can only be used for capital improvements, correct?
Yes, identified in the infrastructure improvement program, capacity-related.
So
fees.
Chair Verberg, were you suggesting as part of your motion, proposed motion, that some of that be taken for roadway?
No,
Okay.
simply increased. I mean, look
Increased.
at the way Jason has explained it to us. We've gone from $17 a square yard or whatever it is to 20-some dollars. I'm sure I don't remember those numbers correctly, Jason. You can add to it. But the point is, the cost of doing this has gone up a lot.
Right.
We're just trying to catch up in the impact area
Okay.
to help us have better roads for what they do.
Okay, so your motion, part of your motion is to suggest an increase. Again, it would only be used for capital.
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay, that's all. the
Yeah, we don't
questions I
want
have.
to siphon it off. We just want,
Right.
we want to be able to do a little more, given the cost increase of materials and,
Okay.
the contracts we've been getting in terms of contract bids. Any other questions on the suggested motion? If not, the chair will entertain a motion. Would someone care to make it?
Chair Verber, could you restate that motion?
Yeah, because I did ramble a little bit, and probably for the audience, it's even worse out there. I'm sorry. Basically, we would be sending a letter saying, we have some infrastructure needs in the future and now. We know RTA at next is going to take care of some of that. But if RTA Next is not reauthorized by the voters, we ask the board to consider a half-cent sales tax and a small increase in impact fees to help us go forward and to earmark some of that money for transportation. I don't know what that share is, but it'd be really nice if we could earmark some money for transportation, because we're not going to get there otherwise. And in 5 years, 3 years, we're going to be riding on the same bumpy roads we had 3 or 4 years ago. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. Yes. So Tom, are you going to make a motion or not?
I'm concerned about the part about impact fees. Because impact fees are used for a very specific reason, and they have to be used within a region. Okay? So if we make a general statement about using a portion of impact fees for anything other than a capacity-related issue, then, and I'll ask Catherine and Paul.
No, excuse me. That wasn't what my motion was.
Oh. you said
Simply it'd be
impact.
increased so that we can do those projects a little sooner that are in the plan. We're not siphoning any money off
Okay, I thought you
for
said-
other
I
roads.
thought you specifically said impact fees.
Well, impact fees for the purpose they're designating, get a little bit more money there. It's costing more to do these projects.
Oh, yeah.
So if we increase the fee a little bit, a little sooner, I don't know if it's $1 million or $3 million, then we're allowed to do those projects a little sooner because we can accumulate money a little sooner with the cost of increasing. So no, I wasn't suggesting that.
I have a comment as well, Chair, on the impact fee portion of your motion. It's kind of hard for me to just recommend like a blanket, statement of increasing impact fees, because the way the studies are done, there's also a cost to it, like to the housing market and developers. It's hard to say where that economic balance is without doing the study, I think. And so it's hard to just say, in my mind, it should be higher without knowing where the trade-offs are across the entire economy. So it certainly should be reviewed or studied, I think, but I would be hesitant to just say it should go up. So that's
Why don't we
kind
just?
of my comment.
Well, then, that would be a friendly amendment, that we look at impact fees and see, based on the review, based on a review as to what we can do to make sure those projects advance in a timely way. Does that sound good? Okay. So now, do we have a motion? Go ahead, Tom. I see you. I hopefully know all your questions have been answered, and I know your supervisor is a little anxious about this sort of thing, so not trying to put you on the spot. But remember, this is qualified upon RTA Next.
Yeah, and we won't know anything about RTA next for
Right.
another year and a half.
It's gonna be a while.
After it goes to the vote.
Right. And that's, meantime, we can do the review on the impact fees. That's coming up anyway, so.
Okay, I'll move your motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So we have a motion to basically send a letter to the board saying, we'd like you to consider sales tax. We know there'll be a review of infrastructure fees, impact fees, and we encourage that to move forward so we can advance those roads and those projects also at the same time. And we're going to include this qualifier in our paper and attach the paper. And the qualifier means sales tax takes time to plan and work through. We don't just do this overnight. Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, hearing none opposed. Again, I'm not going to be chair, but I'm going to be happy to go to my supervisor and talk this through with him. And I think we each need to do this. Once we've sent the letter to our supervisors, we should step forward and ask for a meeting with them. And we can do that through the chief of staff for each of them. And they can hear what our deliberations were and why we're making this suggestion. And we're not putting them on the spot because, let's face it, your RTA is a ways away anyway. But it kind of alerts them, hey, let's plan ahead. Let's look ahead. Maybe there's something else we need to do. Anything else? Otherwise,
Sure, can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
What's the intended process, or who writes the letter?
I will draft the letter and present it to the committee in the next meeting. Okay? I see a lot of nods of the head. Yeah. I work with John Burnell on the last letter that we sent to the board. I might ask John to give me some input, for example, because he's our subcommittee chair. He's been around, done a lot, so. And then each of you will get a clip at it. It's going to be draft. We'll sort of work it through so everybody's satisfied that we're doing what we all agreed to do. Okay? All right, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, we might want some highlights of what we would take to the supervisor, so we're all saying the same thing, you know. All right, Paul, thank you so much. We kind of know, within reason, what we would get for $50 million, and of course, the other local jurisdictions for sales tax would benefit also. So thank you for your hard work putting this together for us. We appreciate it.
Happy to help. Thank you.
Okay. That wasn't easily done, by the way, for all those in the audience. I mean, we've really worked at this. This is not the first time sales tax has been looked at for possible option for funding. So it did come up once before, and one of the supervisors didn't agree. Maybe this will go nowhere, but it's kind of incumbent upon us as a committee to step forward and say, we think more is needed if we do believe that. And of course we do, since we passed the motion. All right, let's go to the next topic. Road update. Jason Bowley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, we're happy to present this month's update of our road repair program. Getting started, so starting off with our list of substantially complete projects for the year, you can see this has grown, pardon the pun, but substantially since the last time we talked. And there are an additional 3 or 4 projects on here from the last time that we had met. All the crack seal projects for this fiscal year are now complete, as well as all of our ADA curb ramp projects. They are complete, and so you see those on that list there, along with one of our paving projects that has also moved into completion as well. So we do have some ongoing projects to talk about. So our Northeast Mill and Pave project is moving along quite quickly. They have finished about 50% of this project, and they're currently working on Reddington Road. They're targeting a finish date toward the end of February for that project, and it's moving along quite nicely. Weather obviously is an impacting fee, we talked a lot about impact fees. Wow, that's on my brain now. Weather is going to be a critical item going forward in terms of the rain that's been happening, delaying a little bit of the paving activity. The Southwest Mill and Pave project, this project is just getting kicked off here this week, actually. So it is a brand new ongoing project, just getting started with milling activities this week. They are also expecting to be done toward the end of February, so that should move along quite quickly. And then our big hard bid project for the year, the Casa Vilbes Catalina Mill and Pave project, is also getting going. They just started here in the last week or so working on Overton Road, and then we should be seeing a completion of that entire project toward the beginning of April. So once it gets going here in earnest in the next couple weeks, it should start moving along quite quickly as well. So some projects that are upcoming, we mentioned this one last time. This is our Sierrita Mountain Road two-way left turn lane and mill and pave project. So this is a combo project between our capital improvement group as well as our pavement repair group. So this project is getting ready to get going here in the next week or so, I believe. So that should get going pretty quickly, and once they get rolling, we anticipate it to be a fairly quick project in the next 3 or so months, getting toward completion. So very, very excited to get that one going. Another one we've talked a little bit about, our Pitcher Rocks and Northwest Area Surface Treatment Project. So this was awarded to Southern Arizona Paving, and they're expecting to get this started toward the middle of February. So this one should be moving into that construction phase here very shortly as well. There are 3.58 miles of local roads and 8.58 miles of arterial collector roads. That does include part of Manville Road, part of Rudisill Road, and part of Pitcher Rocks Road as well. Another project to talk about is the Central Southwest Surface Treatment Project. It says advertised, but this was awarded. You see the bid opening date of 1/17. So this has been awarded since these slides were put together. The contractor for this job is going to be ISX Construction, and the low bid for it was $752,802. So right there basically on the top end of the engineer's estimate for this project. Locals, there's 2.24 miles of local road and 6.99 miles of arterial collector. So this does include part of Irvington Road as well as Aerospace Parkway and a few other small sections of arterial collector and local roads in it. The next job, Linda Vista Terrace Mill and Pave Project. So this, you can see also bid opening was on the 18th. So this has been awarded since the slide was put together. Also awarded to ISX Construction. The low bid on this project was $408,736, so just under engineer's estimate on this one. There's 0.82 miles of local and 0.24 miles of arterial collector, and this is all in that area of Shannon, Linda Vista. We do expect completion on this prior to the end of April. So this, another surface treatment job to talk about, Tanque surface treatment. This is all up on the northeast side of the metro area. The low bid is today, so I don't have who the contractor is yet, but by next meeting we will certainly have that information for you. There's 25.02 miles of local road and 0.94 miles of arterial collector road. A lot of surface treatment on this package. And the anticipated completion date on this is the end of May. So, another project to talk about. We're throwing a lot at you so far. This is our Heritage Hills Mill and Pave project. This is in our preparation stage. We're getting ready to advertise it this week. And so this will be moving out onto the street for contractors to bid on here fairly shortly. The engineer's estimate for it is $1.3 to $1.6 million. The bid opening is still to be determined, but it should be some point in the mid-February timeframe. There's 2.2 miles of local and 0.65 miles of arterial collector. This does include a piece of Camino de la Tierra north of Ina within the Heritage Hills subdivision. And the completion date on this is going to be the end of June, mid-end of June. Last project to talk about, Foothill Surface Treatment. So this is also in our package preparation stage. We do anticipate this being advertised at the same time as that last project that we talked about. The engineer's estimate on this is $900,000 to $1.2 million. Still with that bid opening to be determined. There's 3.66 miles of local road and 4.93 miles of arterial collector road. This does include parts of Swan Road as well as Thornydale Road and several subdivisions off Flowing Wells Road. So that's a lot of numbers, a lot of projects. So kind of where we're at as a whole for the program, you can see that pie chart's looking pretty well evenly split at this point. A lot of our dollars are now complete. That's that light blue column up there in the top right. A lot in construction in orange, with a lot more of the gray awarded category getting ready to move over to that in construction within the next couple weeks or so. Some projects advertised as well in yellow, and then the remaining in the blue package prep getting ready to move into that advertised. So that pie chart will begin shifting quite drastically over the next couple of months as we start getting projects into construction and completed in short order. With that, I'll remind everyone that you can view the status of all the roads at our road repair preservation project map. There's the link there below. We do anticipate having a new map getting launched at that same site here very shortly. I don't know the exact time frame, but hopefully in the next couple months. It'll look very much the same. It'll function very much the same, but it'll have a little more detail on it for those that are interested in that sort of thing. And with that, I will open to any questions.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the update. Question for you, it looked like 3 out of the 4 things that were advertised recently or awarded recently came in under the engineer's estimate, a couple substantially so. Just wondering, now that it looked like about 3/4 of the program was awarded at this point, do you have any sense of how it's tracking for expenditures versus planned budget and like
Yeah,
over,
so
under?
I know we had mentioned that briefly at the last meeting too. And so we have, those last 2 that were in package prep are our last 2 planned projects for the year. And so we do anticipate by that mid-February time point, knowing a pretty good number of what our total for the year has been and any savings that might be there that might then be redistributed to a new project or whatever might be there. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a lot better nail down of what that looks like. And my guess would be by the next meeting, we'll have that for you all.
Great, thank you.
It'll be in focus, huh?
Yep, it'll be in focus. Exactly.
Any other questions? Yes, Tom.
Hey, Jason, so now that package prep is completed.
Yep.
In a month, we'll have a tight shot group and in focus on if there's a surplus. So we'll identify any additional roads that can be repaired or do a mill and pave and a surface treatment. Oh, look at Catherine's.
Catherine's ready.
Are we,
We're evaluating the options, and it is our goal to have some recommendations by February.
great.
So I don't want to say it will be delivered this fiscal year, because we have to look at the constraints of staffing and what we can get out. In previous years, we had a significant number of contracted inspectors, and this year, one of our cost savings measures has been to reduce that number, so we're doing inspection and packaging with staff, and so that's one of the, it's not just the financial component, it's the staffing component and
Okay.
delivery. So will it happen this fiscal year, will it be next fiscal year? But we will have a recommendation for next month.
okay, and then, so preparation for next year's list. When will that begin?
Should we spill the beans?
It's already begun?
It's already begun.
It's already begun?
It's already begun.
Fantastic.
We're not very far into it, but it's already begun. It's enough I can say we've already
You got
begun.
an outline.
Yeah.
Well, and Jason, you know this question's not going away because it's the second time it's come up, so.
Oh, I know it, yep.
And I'm sure people out in the audience there are interested in it also, so.
Yeah, so we are starting to work on putting together that fiscal '25 program. And so over the next several months, that'll start getting way more into focus. And we do anticipate having that out by May like we would normally have it, so.
Sounds good, and we do appreciate the caveat from Director. And I think, so thank you very much, Jason. I think we're good. And I think Director Skinner's on now for RTA next.
Chair Berger, we do have a question on WebEx before we move on.
Oh, thank you for letting us know. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, this is John Bernal.
Hi, John. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, it's all yours, John. Ask your question.
Yeah, this is John Bernal.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We got you, John.
I can't, the audio is pretty tough today, but anyway, my question is this. Since the recent discussion of pavement preservation in the RTA discussion focuses on projects that were built with RTA money, do we have an idea at Pima County what we will need to maintain those roadways currently or going forward into the next 10 or 20 years?
So you're talking a breakout of those costs? Is that what I'm understanding correctly, John?
Yes, that's right, yes, please.
So I did, John,
I'm understanding that both the city of Tucson and Pima County are still not dropping that subject, even though it hasn't gotten much traction overall with the RTA. I'd be interested to know what kind of dollars the county is looking at to maintain those roadways that have been improved with RTA money.
sure. John Bernal, this is Catherine Skinner, and I can respond to that because Jason and I have chatted some about this topic. So as the discussions at the RTA board have gone, really all that the RTA Next funds could be used for is what they were coining capital maintenance. So what Jason went ahead and did is an evaluation of those projects we delivered in RTA 1. So the named corridor projects that were delivered in RTA 1, what would be the cost to do a single mill and repave on those roadways in the next 20 years? So we didn't do a cost breakout for, whatever crack sealing or seal coats it would need, but if we were just looking a mill and pave using today's dollars, it was right around $25 million to do all of our RTA 1 built projects.
Great. That's the information I was interested in, Catherine. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And that'd be in today's dollars too, so.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more time because I almost missed one. Any other questions? All
I
right,
almost
now-
got away from the podium last time.
Okay,
It was this
she
close.
she wasn't rushing up, but here she is now. Thank you, John, for bringing that up.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Catherine Skinner. I'm the Director of Transportation for Pima County. And as I do every month, I'll give the RTA Next update. So a little reminder of where we were when we met December 12th, the Transportation Advisory Committee. I mentioned how busy we'd been and how many meetings had occurred, and there were two plans that were really being discussed at that time. One plan was called a 4.2 and one was a 5.1. So since then, the city of Tucson, since that time, we've had two Transportation Management Committee meetings, Technical Management Committee meetings, rather, on January 4th and January 17th, because the charge from the RTA board at their last meeting had been to come up with a plan. You have one more month, essentially, to come up with a plan. There was a CAC special group that was going to give a presentation of what their proposal had been, and then it really was Technical Management Committee sit down and come up with a plan. So that is what has happened between the January 4th and January 17th meeting. First, the city of Tucson presented a proposal on their part, which did not move forward. And then at our most recent meeting, the county put forward a proposal presented by County Administrator Lesher and Deputy County Administrator DeBonis. And this proposal essentially took the city's proposal and the 5.1 proposal and tried to find the commonality between it and how can we make it all fit. So that proposal did one major thing, I would say, and that is it added a portion of the regional funding, the non-RTA regional funding, to, the pot, if you will, of RTA Next. So we're looking at a $5 million addition for the last 15 years of the 20-year RTA program for a total of $75 specific dollars. And the proposal called out specifically that would go to the element that's titled Safety and Active Transportation. You might ask, why only the last 15 years of the plan rather than the full 20 years? And that's because the current Transportation Improvement Plan, which is a 5-year plan that's under development right now, is utilizing all of the regional funds, RTA and non-RTA funds, to deliver RTA 1 projects. So since that was already spoken for, we were only looking at that future funding. So the TMC discussed this proposal at the 17th meeting. Ultimately, there was a motion that passed with one dissenting vote, but that motion had a few changes and modifications, of course, after much discussion, about 5 hours of discussion. So in addition to that $5 million a year for the last 15 years, the other modifications were, there were two city roadway projects that needed to be added back in. Those were Prince Road and Harrison Road. And then there were a series of cuts that were required to stay within the $2.34 billion projected revenue of RTA Next. So the cuts were that both the county and the city would make $20 million in reductions. The county's reductions would be specifically from the safety and active transportation category. ADOT had proposed, and Marana concurred, that there could be a $25 million reduction to the RTA funds on the Marana's Cortero and Interstate 10 transportation interchange project. And so that 25 million, it removes RTA funds, but it also kind of earmarks other regional funds that could be used on that project. Additionally, a $10 million reduction to South Tucson projects because they were in with a lump sum of $35 million of projects yet to be identified, and they agreed after discussions that $25 million is a more is an agreeable amount for the city of South Tucson. Additionally, debt service was reduced by $40 million. So with that series of changes, that motion passed with just one dissenting vote. So a quick summary of the plan as it stands today. There is $1,071 million worth of new roadway corridor projects. So those are big corridor projects. Generally, they're widening projects, not exclusively, but they are full reconstruct of arterial roadways. Then there's $239 million of deferred roadway projects. That's those 4 projects from RTA 1 that will need to be delivered in RTA Next. There are $249 million of safety and active transportation projects. There's $610 million for transit. The transit breaks out this way. First, it is continuing the existing transit service. So we want to make sure that we can maintain what is out there today. The second is $70 million of dedicated funding for bus rapid transit along the Oracle or Stone alignment in the city of Tucson. And then the remaining dollars, and this is still up for some discussion and detail work by committees, is going to go to expansion of the network. So there is still more work to come in the transit category, but overall it's $610 million that's dedicated for that. $70 million has been set aside for the debt service, administrative costs, and the small business program portion of the RTA. And then there's $40 million worth of this overlap contingency. So again, last month we discussed contingency had been defined previously. We had just said contingency. And then it was explained that a portion is because there will be an overlap between when the existing RTA would have expired and the new one coming in a little bit earlier. So we need some overlap to make sure that we're still funding out things from RTA 1. One other item to note about the plan as it stands today, within the safety and active transportation category, there are a number of named projects. The city of Tucson had identified quite a few named projects. So in the current RTA, this is really flexible funding that you can apply for funding when there's a call available for whatever project or need comes up. In RTA Next, instead, we are aiming at known roadways so that we can identify and secure that investment on those corridors. So the city of Tucson originally identified their projects, and then there was a request that all of the rest of the jurisdictions submit projects. So the county has done so, as have other jurisdictions. Next, John, did you want to chime in on a topic? I'll keep going. So next steps will be that next week the RTA board is going to meet and discuss this and perhaps take action to move forward with this proposed plan. There will then be a public comment period and input and outreach period. Then ultimately the plan will revisions after that time period. And then ultimately the plan will go to the voters in the spring of 2025. So at this time, John Bernal is on the technical management committee, so he sat in on a lot of these meetings as well that have been discussing this. If there's anything you'd like to add, John, or open it up to the committee for questions.
Mr. Chairman, Catherine, no, other than, of course, as you know, both the Board of Supervisors and Tucson City Council are discussing the topic today.
Yes, thank you. I would have made an update on what the board had to say, but they didn't get to the item before I came to this meeting, so I'm eager to hear both of those discussions, and it may influence that conversation on Thursday. For those of you that don't know, the RTA board is made up of the mayors of all the towns and cities, as well as Supervisor Rex Scott from the Board of Supervisors.
I do have a question. If I recall correctly, please change the assumption, but in RTA, the first part, there was a small share put aside for art and aesthetics. Is that still true going forward? So when you drive down Grant Road, you have a new sculpture, you see some beautiful landscaping and things like that. Is that still going to happen in RTA 2?
So,
next?
yeah, that's a great question. The RTA covered the expenses related to art if a jurisdiction or agency has a policy for art on projects. So the county has a policy that requires art on capital projects, and therefore it was an eligible expense. It wasn't a set-aside line item per se in the ballot, but it was an eligible expense, and that's why you've seen a lot of it go in with the RTA corridor projects. I think I did maybe forget to mention there is an environmental element to this. I think I skipped over it, but it's $50 million in the RTA Next plan for an environmental element.
Other questions?
Catherine, I've got a question. For the safety projects, you said it was a list of named projects, and the other jurisdictions are going to come up with named projects. Will the named projects take up the entire budget, or will there still be some budget left for discretionary projects as they come up?
At this point, it does take up the entirety of the funding, with the exception of the South Tucson projects, which have not been specifically identified as of yet, and I don't know or wouldn't be able to speak to whether they'll have those identified, but those would be reserved for South Tucson.
Thanks.
Sure, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Maybe a follow-up to Bill's. If the, I think you said the safety and ATP projects are what, they're moving to more of a named element now. Are those going to be as rigid as the named capital projects in terms of their inflexibility to change, or are those treated separately?
That's a great question.
I
think jury's still out. I know what you're speaking of, because I know for those of you a little less familiar with the RTA 1 and the named corridor projects, there were instances where it specifically said, this needed to be a 6-lane facility with bus lanes. And it was a little bit challenging to work through the effort of determining and delivering a lesser scope project that still delivered the performance of what was intended with that. So I can't really answer how the future will play out. I know that the descriptions are less developed and refined for those active transportation projects at this point. So it's more modernization of a corridor, or inclusion of bike facilities. So I think that just in that language, there's a lot of flexibility, but I guess the jury's still out on that.
Yeah, I think it would be a worthy discussion to have, because it's hard enough, I think, to plan these major corridors that happen over the next 20 years, like safety and ATP elements. It's really hard to know what is a safety issue 15 years from now in, the third phase of
And
so just kind of my
we have
on it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. For especially, we had intersection projects that we put forth that are safety projects, if you will, and I will say we did not provide a detailed scope. We provided an intersection, and I said it was far too premature to say if it's a roundabout, if it's a signal, if it's turn lanes. That needs to really be determined at the time a project's delivered through a traffic report and other evaluations.
Okay, Catherine, I've got another question. Sean's, as you worked through as the committee worked through and I know it was, worked through the different alternatives, was there any kind of modeling to determine the the performance matrix of the different alternatives, and was that even considered in the decision-making?
I'm going to say no. So there was a portal created, and projects for the roadway element were submitted in that portal. So that could give reports on existing conditions of different metrics, pavement condition, the existence of sidewalk, bike lanes, what current volumes are, other elements that they had data on, as well as looking at things like the 2045 projected volumes and whether there was going to be some sort of congestion issue on that route. But if you're asking whether the entire final project was evaluated for how it would affect the network, no.
Okay.
Very lively discussion. Any other questions?
I've got a question, Chair.
Okay, Tom.
So looking under the safety element, active transportation things, thanks for finally including a couple projects for the Green Valley area in there, or light items. Got a question on the one for the buffered bike lane on White House Canyon Road. When it goes from Continental to the Union Pacific Railroad, are there going to be provisions made to look at the drainage on that part of White House Canyon Road? Because it's pretty hectic out there, right in that area, especially just on the west side of the Union Pacific Railroad.
And I think that's back to what Sean asked about scope constraints for some of these projects.
Okay.
Our goal would be to deliver projects that don't require an undue amount of maintenance to keep debris off of those buffered bike lanes. And so that means evaluating some of the drainage. We all know that UPRR is a constraint that is costly, and sometimes it becomes prohibitive for us to do, the ideal solution. It's not like you're going to grade separate for this infrastructure. But, looking at drainage and trying to improve it with a project like this, I don't think would be out of bounds.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. I think you've received more questions this time than in a
So
long
far.
time, which is good. There's a lot of activity going on with RTNX. Thank you so much.
Let everybody know, there's details to what Catherine talked about. There was a memo by Administrator Lesher to the Board of Supervisors on the 19th. So you can find out the details and the costs on all of those projects in there.
Yeah, and I will also say, if you are very interested, there's also the RTA board meeting. It's available on YouTube as well. That's where these discussions and determinations are going to be made on what stays in and what maybe doesn't.
Okay.
It's good, Tommy. You're on top of these things. Thank you.
Well, those people down there keep me on top of it.
Well, that helps. Nice to have connections. Okay, thank you, Director Skinner.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're onward to calls to the audience. We have 3 here. If by chance you came in and filled out one of these forms that you want to speak and you haven't submitted it, please submit it to us. So I'm going to start with Joshua Buell, and he wants to talk about El Camino Aurelia. Are you still with us, Joshua, or did you?
He is, he's on WebEx, so I will unmute him.
Morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Joshua. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Joshua, we can, and thank you. You're our first speaker from the audience.
So I'm coming before the committee today to speak about a 1-mile stretch of road on the southeast side, all the way downtown, it's Camino Aurelia. This is the second time I've come to the committee about this, and this is a road it's falling apart in the west. Plenty of seed click fix to fix the potholes. But we're really looking for the road to be repaved. It needs to be milled and paved again. I checked the PCI numbers, and interestingly enough, the PCI went up to 56. Well, the last time I spoke to the committee, it was around, I think, a 42. So I'm pretty sure it's impossible for this road to get better, but somehow, according to PCI numbers, it has. I have received the answer as to how the committee determines what roads to select, but when you look at how you select roads, I understand it, it makes sense, it's prudent, but at the end of the day, it looks like my small section of road is 1 mile. There's about 100 homes back here, so most maybe 400 vehicles pass over this road daily. We just can't compete with the Houghtons of Valencias, the Tinker Berets of Tucson. I would like to see that the committee comes to maybe another solution for these smaller roads that just can't compete with those, possibly turning one of the pothole crews into a paving crew or something to that effect. That's what I wanted to come to the committee about is a small little road in southeast Tucson, well, Pima County. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jason, for stepping forward again. We'll take another look and we'll get back to you yet again. So brief draft, you'll hear back from staff. And the staff, by the way, to folks, we know what's with us. They go out to folks, so we know what's going on. Okay, Jean Ann Gantz. Is Jean Ann here?
Yes, I am.
Please come forward. Thank you. Okay, and we'll pass them around. Okay, got it. I said, no, we'll pass it along, I'm saying.
Okay, my name is Jean Ann Gatz, and I'm from Patil Hills 2 down in Green Valley. And we have had quite a few issues with our road. And when I look at who's here, they're all the people, most of the part, on our road, which is part of Amelia, and it goes down, it curves, and then we're on to Camino Mayor. As I understand it, my neighbor across the street, Don Gibbons, and his wife Dolores, have been there for about 31 years. She actually worked for Pierce Construction, who also did Portillo Ridge, Portillo Hills 1, Portillo Hills 2, and Portillo Place. So, as I understand it, they 1990 division, it was started about 1993. By 1995, there were 33 homes built, according to those neighbors that I talked to you about. Unfortunately, they couldn't come today. They are quite elderly, and it's hard for a lot of the people down there to get up here. They had a lot of issues about putting roads. They wanted to put one straight over to Portillo Ridge, which is across the arroyo from us. Then they also wanted to put a road on Camino Mayor back into where the state land was, which is now owned by the mines. That got stopped, thank goodness, because I live right there by it. I don't want something there. Anyway, apparently Mr. Tony Freeland, who runs Pierce Construction, was in a hurry to get started on Portillo Ridge. Our property, which is the very last property, was the place where they put all the equipment, everything there to work. So very quickly, they took it all out and took it over to Portillo Ridge, and they wanted to get started. Supposedly, from what Don Gibbons told me, they signed off over to the counties. All the other roads in the whole subdivision got their second coat. From Amelia all the way back to our house, it never got the second coat. It's bad. I think you're Tony? Tom, excuse me. I emailed back and forth with you. He explained a few things to me. I don't really understand it because roads aren't my thing. But our road is so bad, and you can see most of these people here from our subdivision are on our road. No one else really cares because they don't drive on it. You can't ride a bicycle on it. I have a letter in there from some lady a few years ago who actually fell because the road is so bumpy. You cannot ride a bike on it. People ride their bikes on the sidewalk. And we're all elderly people now. You can't walk on it. We have one person that has pictures in there of his tires, how it's ruining the tires. I can't attest to that, but that's what he thinks is going on with that. Last year when they did Esperanza Estates, they did the whole subdivision, and their roads were not as bad as ours. At least the part from Amelia back to our house. I was... Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to keep talking till I'm done. okay, so they came back and they did Esperanza, and they went over the bridge into our subdivision. Well, lucky Donna Collins, or over in that way, their roads aren't that bad, but Martha has that first house. It got to that road, past her house, to Agradable. How fair is that? Why couldn't they just come all the way back to the end of the road? That doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, since I can't say everything I wanted to say, then they start cleaning the roads. They clean the roads, all the pebbles hit up on the driveways. If your car's out there, they're going to get nicked. So all of a sudden, we had a thing with the Pima County that we do not have our roads cleaned. And then our president, Donna Collins, someone asked about getting the roads cleaned, so she called the county to get them done. They were supposed to stop at Amelia and not go any further. Well, they go all the way back now. So if anyone's cars are out there, they're going to get nicked. So anyway, and ours, we've all poked. And I just don't understand. Is it a misuse of the money, the taxes that we pay?
You're getting to the whole heart of the issue of what we were talking about earlier.
I know.
We don't have enough money. We're looking for sources so we can finish roads like yours. So
I know. I understand that. But when we've been there for 31 years and never got the second coat on our road, I think that's pretty absurd. I just think there needs to be something done. And they could have just, at least if they just come from way down on Esperanza, all the way back down on Hogado, and back on Mayor, at least the main part of it will, we'd be happy with right now. Now when you finally decide to do it, you're going to go on all the new roads you just put on. And then you're going to bring all the big equipment on the new roads you just did. That doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, I'm done.
Well, thank you for your time, though. We do have criteria as to where we stop and where we take up, and it has to do with our sources of money and how much we get. That's what we've been facing. We've done a lot over the last 4 years plus, and we have a lot more to do, so we appreciate your comments. If you have submitted a form to speak, you may speak. If not, please get a form, and I'll be happy to. Yeah, this is a form that's available online, and you're welcome. Anybody is welcome to fill out the form to speak. Okay. There is one more thing that I have to say going to the next person. We have to be fair about the amount of time we give to each person. Usually it's 3 to 4 minutes, and I failed to mention that before we started the calls to the audience. So that's what we do to be fair to the other speakers. So.
And all those sheets of paper, we had a petition signed, and we had 76 out of 88 homes sign that petition. That's how upset people are in our subdivision.
Believe me, I just moved from a road just like what you're talking about, so I understand. Yes, ma'am.
I've lived on that street since 1995. I'm still waiting for this last coat to be put on that road.
And we'd be happy to. And,
Since my house was finished. I was wondering how much longer you think I should wait. I'm almost 90. About 10 more.
we all are going for longevity, but not related to roads, believe me. We take this seriously, and I appreciate the comments. We really do. That's what we're here for as a committee. We're supposed to listen, and that's what we're trying to do. Okay. We don't have enough to do what we need to do, but we're working at it. All right, the next person on for call to the audience, Alan up.
Okay, and I too came with handouts. Because I don't think talking about it does justice. Here's a few parts of our road, so we don't have as much road as we have anymore. There's a picture.
Looks like the road I used to live on.
And basically, the point is your current methodology, I think, of driving across the road and measuring the movement doesn't really apply to our road because it's not indicative of the problems we're experiencing. From what I've heard, it's customary to leave the last portion of the road, the last, they call it the top coat or whatever, off until all the construction vehicles are done driving over it, right? So the very last thing they do is make the road really smooth and bring it up to county standards, and one assumes that the county signs off on it. Well, the top level has been left off. Now, as I showed you the little rocks there, you can just go out to our road and pick as many of those as you want, okay? They're pretty good sized. In fact, you go up on a bicycle tire, you'll go off a little bit. We have relatively few cracks and potholes compared to many of the other roads, to be fair. It's just that we have this one, and it cuts our tires. When I first moved here after 2 years or 3 years, I went down to the tire place and I got new tires, and I said, what the heck happened here? I'd never seen them before. He didn't know. A road that's completed. It's not a county standard road. It was never a county standard road, and I'd like to encourage you to, and as she said, you know, when the street sweeper comes by, it's all over the sidewalks, all over the driveways. I mean, because you just kick it and it moves. So I'd like to encourage you to resolve the issue which was caused by the county failure to enforce its rules about this being a road up to county standards. I would expect if it were up to county standards, you would see the problems you had with other roads with potholes forming frequently and things like that as they break down. We don't see that. I think the road is, you know, basically the subsurface of the road's pretty good. So it's hard to understand, but you certainly couldn't walk out there. You know, it will cut your tires. It would cut your feet. It's just not. I see people picking up their dogs to cross from one sidewalk to the other because it hurts the dog's paws too much to walk on it. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you, and believe me, we identify with your issues. I just put on a new set of tires. I've already hit 6 potholes. So we're with you. We're here to help, and we're here to listen. Yeah. Yep, I know what you're talking about too, having driven some of those. And our tires don't last as long, and there's more maintenance on our vehicles. So that's what we're working here as a committee on, trying to listen to comments and trying to factor in as much as we can. One last comment.
Thank you to Tom, because he was very good about getting back to me every time I emailed. He was very good about doing it.
Okay.
He did a great job.
And that's what the committee members are for. We're here to listen. We're here to pass on your concerns. That's why we're sending this letter to the county board, because we know there aren't enough resources to do what we all want to have done. So we appreciate it. We have one other form here. Happy to recognize Norm Starmaker? Stahl?
Just Norm.
Okay, Norm, come on up.
Norman.
Come on up, Norm.
Now, and I realize everybody's wanting to get out of here, so this will just take a second. I'm adding 2 things to this conversation at this point. We have had 2 hospitalizations due to that road, where somebody has tripped on it, fallen, and ended up in the ER. 2 in the past few years. The other thing is, if I sent a picture around of tires that were on the front of my car. They're not there anymore. But less than 20,000 miles on those tires, and they're pretty well shredded up. And all cars have a tendency to drag the front tires, cars, trucks, anything. It depends upon their alignment. We'll drag a tire a little bit on a turn. And that's where we run into the troubles. I turn into my garage, and I have fresh cuts in my tires. Now, and those tires, those same tires that are getting ripped up, are going out on other streets and on the highway. I drove that same car down here this morning, 75 miles an hour. Traffic was fairly clear. And when tires like that, most of these people don't know that their tires are shredded. And those tires out on the highway are a dangerous thing. That road looks to me, I used to be in the gravel business, that it's about 35% fracture. Okay, what I mean there is the rocks. That is from a glacial deposit. Those rocks come, a lot of them have granite, so on and so forth. And you run them over a screen, and apparently that ran over about a 3/4 inch screen. Anything that's 3/4 or less drops through, goes into the mix. Anything that doesn't drop through goes through a crusher, cone type, or reciprocating kind, and then through a set of rollers. to fracture it on down to a size where the next time across, it'll go through the screen. So that's how those rocks get those sharp edges. And they are very well held by the blacktop that was put in 30 years ago, with those points pointing up, shredding your tires. I'm done.
Well, I'm just going to add a footnote to that because frankly, with these new tires I just got, I was 17,000 miles short of the warranty. So Firestone paid up the difference, but it didn't make any better tires for those tires that I bought some time ago. So we hear what you're saying. We really do. We appreciate it. And we're here working on your behalf, trying to get us all to better roads. So, and thank you for coming in. That's important to us as a committee to hear from you. We appreciate it. And staff will be getting back to you with the draft, of which, of course, we get copies. So thank you very much. I think I'm going to entertain, well, first off, I'm missing something on the agenda. Our next meeting, which Charlene will be in charge of, February 27th. And then if you have any agenda topics to submit, there's an email address on the agenda. Submit any topics that we're not covering that you think need attention. And last but not least, we're going to adjourn this meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Charlene moves, Tom seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Now, everybody wants out of here. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.